bright, bright day, when the sun on your face.
Well, I thought it would be really useful to give you a little tour of the buildings in a bit more detail. This was the standby set house, some excellent graffiti as you can see. This room here would have housed the engines, backup engines for the site, and it was built to be reinforced bomb-proof building so that if there was an attack that these engines would continue to service the rest of the building or the rest of the site itself. It was built with 3 layers of brickwork on the envelope of the building, reinforced precast concrete roof and cast concrete floor. So in another video I talk about the foundations of the building itself. That was pretty serious. So you can see outside we have the secondary area, which we think was a sort of a blast wall in effect, so a first line of defence to the main engine room of this building. This is a double height space, and again in another video I'll talk about what we're going to do to convert this into my mum-in-law's house. So mightn't look any great shakes at the moment, but it's going to be pretty cool as a proposal. It's deceptive as well how big these spaces are, because there's nothing to scale it against. This is a series of big spaces. Just outside, as a side note, this is the reservoir. So we're going to reinstate this as a water feature. You can see that there's a retaining wall that drops down. The trees have all grown out the side of it because the trees like to nestle into the brickwork and decide to grow out of wherever they could get a bit of protection. But this was a reservoir for retaining water. So again, if there was fires and things, they'd have a reservoir of water to be able to use on site at the ready. So that's that part of the overall strategy of the site. If there was a bomb attack, that the buildings, these essential parts of infrastructure, would have remained. Again, in another video, I'll show you in a bit more detail things like the drainage and the infrastructure underground. Quite a lot down underground, to make sure that the buildings or that the site could still function even if a bomb was dropped on it. So on this site, and I think I've mentioned it already, there would have been about 9 or 10 buildings at least, and the other buildings were almost non-essential, although they were essential to the functioning. If there was an attack, the buildings that had to remain or had to withstand as much as possible were the buildings that still stand today and are as structurally sound and that they are reusable. So the building that we're just going down to now, down the concrete roads that exist, which we're retaining. So these again were part of the original infrastructure of the site, and we think it's important to retain as much of the historical and original fabric of the site as possible. So this was the building, our future home. Beautiful. My dad did say that all we need to do is put up the curtains and we're nearly done, which I think is just epitomizes the optimism of the Irish. This was the Contamination Unit, 2 entrances, one for people who were injured on the right and one for people who weren't injured on the left. We'll talk a little bit more about that once we get into the building. This was built again with 3 layers of brickwork on the outside. The foundations in another video are seriously deep, concrete, solid as a rock. They're not going anywhere. On the left hand side, just as a side note, you can see the one of the blast trenches, and this was your first port of call. So if there was a bomb, you would have got in here. They're quite deep, but they've been over time filled up with soil and leaves and that sort of thing. So as we go into the building, you can see that there's a little trench here, a little dip in the ground, and this was in effect like what you'd have in a swimming pool, an old bleach bath for your feet. So when you were going into the building, if you were covered in mustard gas, you'd get your feet cleared off in here and you'd be into the first room of decontamination. And this room Again, some choice graffiti there. This room had the crouching toilet to minimise the amount of contact you'd have with the fabric of the building itself. So obviously if you're, covered in mustard gas or whatever, you wouldn't want to be touching anything. So this room was all designed to get you the starting of the cleaning up, basically cleaning you up. So you'd obviously obsessed with that toilet. You'd get cleaned up in here, you'd take your clothes off and you'd chuck them out this little letterbox, we're calling them. Some people think they're for guns, but they're not. These were where you'd chuck out your little clothes. We found this really nice piece of original paintwork. I know it's only tiny and not very important to many people, but we're quite enamoured by it, and we'll try to save that piece of stone somewhere. But essentially chuck your contaminated clothes out there and continue through on the process. Another important thing about this room actually is that it's rendered. So this room we expect was rendered so that they could clean down the room. So if there had been a mustard gas attack, that actually they could wash it down completely. And there's some drains in the floor which suggest that was possible in that room, so you'd hose it all down. Once you're stripped off, you come through to the shower room. This space is actually going to be our kitchen. Beautiful. Again, not looking any great shakes at the moment, but it's going to be beautiful. This is the area where if you were injured, you'd come through to, and then obviously the shower room was designed to accommodate everybody coming through here. You can see actually in the drains in the floor, there's close up there, there's just evidence again of brackets that would have held the dividers between the shower cubicles, and the drainage connects back to the main drainage of the site. We think there's a little space in there for another shower, maybe a female shower, not quite sure. In here, this was what we expect. On the left was like a storage for medical supplies. This was a space where if you were injured, you'd be coming through from this space. And again, it's rendered walls. The letterbox out to chuck your clothes out to the drainage area that's out there, out the front of the building. Interestingly, Kingsley is written up there. Kingsley is the name of one of the apartments in the gatehouse that we're living in at the manor. And you go back through here, there's another crouching toilet there on the right, although if you're injured it'd be quite tricksy, I think. Coming through here, this is going to be our future dining room. Beautiful. Looking forward to entertaining there. This was the one of the airlocks going out of the building. We think this is long so that a stretcher could have been sat in there and taken out through that space quite comfortably. And on the left hand side here, it's very dark, can't quite see it, but this was one of the rooms, so this is the sort of office room of the building where they would have given out clean clothes and things like that. And then through to this room, which was essentially where you would get dressed and get sorted to head back out again, or maybe hang out for a while the mustard gas cleared. But so evidence in here that there was another toilet. This was a more standard toilet. You can see the base of it there, and on the wall you can see the bracket that would have held the cistern. This room has a collapsed roof, and the evidence you can see in terms of construction is the same as what we have in the set house. This is precast reinforced concrete panels. This has collapsed because the snorkel, which would have drawn air in to the building, has collapsed onto it. But everywhere else it's really intact. These were quite innovative structures of the time actually. The hollow core you can see there, good evidence of that. The hollow core precast concrete slabs spanned quite a big distance, but they were relatively light because they were hollow. Still a technology that's used today in construction, but these would have been an early example of those. So it's really nice to have those still mostly intact, and we'll be retaining those as part of the existing structure and probably reusing some from elsewhere in the building to replace what we need to. So this was the snorkel. So although it looks like a chimney, it was actually what we expect was where it pulled air into the building, clean air, because it was really tall. It was about 6 meters tall. So I suppose trying to get above where the contaminated air was and suck clean air down into the building and create a pressurized environment. So you can see there that the roof is probably collapsed at that point. Again, trying to retain as much of the original fabric as possible. Where we're puncturing through to the first floor is where, or the new first floor, is where the roof has been damaged. So we're retaining as much of the original structure as we can. And yeah, so they're just dropping down into this space. This was, again, we reckon it had a kind of a generator engine in here. It's a lower part of the building. We're going to excavate out some of the floor levels within the existing building, so we have a higher floor to ceiling overall, and this will be, well, you can see there's a base there for some kind of generator. There was a chimney in here, and there are things we'd like to not the engine, but the chimney, externally at least, we want to try to, and the snorkel, we want to try to re-establish and reinstate as part of the respect of the past, and retaining of the original fabric of the building. So that's the little journey through, quick exploration of the buildings themselves, and keep watching for more, and obviously like and subscribe, and continue follow our journey. If you fancy coming to do a bit of a clean up, please let me know.